And as always, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And so we talked Justin Fields. So your thoughts on this deal and what it means moving forward?
You know, what I keep going back to is the Tomlinism, nameless gray faces. I understand this is essentially impossible, but just for the sake of symbolic argument, if you were to apply that to Justin Fields, take out the pedigree, take out the name, look at his career stats. You can even take a look at where he was drafted. Look at what he's done up to this point. Then look at the market that we saw for backup quarterbacks being traded. Literally materialized before this trade. Wasn't an accident, okay? Sam Howell goes for a bevy of picks on either side that eventually kind of netted a little bit for the Commanders. Not a ton. But a backup goes to Seattle. The Steelers trade Kenny Pickett. What they got back was 20 spots in the draft and 2 throwaway picks next year. The deal for Fields is similarly structured to that, with the possibility that he might start. You know, Chicago kind of buying insurance, we can get a little bit more. But Pittsburgh saying confidently, well, we know he's not going to, so we can give up a 6th. That's more or less the net value in any of the backup trades for a quarterback that's making the lower end, financially, the lower end of the backup market. I just went the long way around, Steve, to tell you that they traded for a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
That's all this is. We started this offseason saying one of the things the Steelers are going to need to do, because heaven forbid they're not going to keep Mitch Trubisky on the roster, is backup quarterback. Is that going to be Mason Rudolph? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they would want Mason Rudolph. He ends up signing somewhere else.
Right.
And he's making about the same amount of money that Justin Fields is. So everything that we have points to Fields being a backup quarterback.
Right.
And I haven't even mentioned the fact that after the draft, they have to decline his 5th-year option, because there's absolutely no way they're picking that up. That's the easiest decision they'll ever make. And we've said that about a few of them. Devin Bush, for example. It's easier than not picking up Devin Bush's option.
Right.
Nothing about Justin Fields with the Steelers is a starter unless a starter who came in to create this whirlwind gets hurt. And, nobody's rooting for that to happen. But Kenny Pickett was so upset about it not being a competition in his mind that we're assuming this is what happened. It seems like we have reasonable enough evidence to think that it did. He requested a trade to not compete with Russell Wilson. They didn't acquire another quarterback to come in, be upset that he's not a starter. In fact, I'd even argue that the trade ended up materializing because the Bears, out of respect for Fields, took in some offers and then said, look, they're all roughly the same for us. These are the ones we'll accept. Do you want any of these? We're going to pick one if you don't, but if you want one over the other, we'll make that happen for you. And he chose the Steelers. So in actuality, this really just is a backup quarterback. Fields has a lot of potential. He's a great physical prospect. And as you and I both know, a guy like that's going to stick around the NFL for a long time.
Yep.
Sam Darnold's slated to make $10 million this year. $10 million was a higher-end starting quarterback a decade ago. Doesn't really seem like that much time has gone by, but that's what Darnold is worth. And I'm not saying any of this to downplay Fields, because here's the thing. Any team in the NFL knows the value of a backup quarterback after 2023. It's the Steelers.
Yeah.
The franchise that saw a backup quarterback almost wreck their season, followed by another backup quarterback saving their season. So clearly they're going to value the position, and they needed to bring one in. So in all honesty, you deflate the hype around everything. This is a simple move. It's really not all that there's not nearly as much weight in it as people think that there is. If Fields can't get a market as a starter or a fringe starter next year, maybe he signs back with the Steelers on another one-year deal. That's kind of how backup quarterbacks go nowadays. We'll see, though. And who knows? I mean, heaven forbid, I don't want Russell Wilson to be injured, but if he is, you've got a competent, experienced backup quarterback that can do some things. Probably not the guy you want over 17 games at this point in his career, but he is on the level of a Mason Rudolph, of a Kenny Pickett, of a Sam Howell, guys that have starting experience, not enough to lock down a starting job long term, but somebody you're not getting rid of anytime soon either. All of them are going to be in the league for a while.
And this is, in my opinion, Neal, what happens, and as you know, I've made the analogy how many times, this is what happens when you're the Atlanta Hawks, where you're just good enough to be a playoff team, but you're not good enough to contend, which means you draft later in each round, and you can't get the home run pick you need, like a Ben Roethlisberger, because you weren't as good and could draft higher.
Yep, and that's sports purgatory. It's a tough spot. There is one way to get out of it. There are lots of ways to get out of it. But you probably have to throw a bunch of darts at the board to do that. I would suggest one of them, interestingly enough, because you brought up the Vikings, is to look to do what they just did, or they're about to do, most likely. Acquiring another first-round pick for future assets in an effort to move up to get the guy that you need. At some point, I feel every team has to do that for the same reasons that you mentioned. The inertia of the NFL swings kind of on its own. And you're not actively going out to games, okay? No one tanks in the NFL. There's way too many people involved that have a lot of money on the line.
Yep.
They're not actively going to make themselves look bad, so the owner can draft somebody higher. They're not doing that.
That's right. Your job is on the line every time.
Yeah, the film don't lie. That's the first thing every coach and every player will tell you. They know everything they do is being watched. They're not going to go less than 100%. I know it may not seem like that, but it's probably more, a fan's mentality of what they're watching as opposed to what it actually is. Point being, you can fight that off. When you have a great coach like Mike Tomlin, he can get wins out of a 5-win team. But you do that often enough, and I've said this on this segment a couple times in the last couple of years because it keeps happening. They have a roster that is worse than their final record every year. So because of that, they're drafting later than they probably should be for what they have on board.
Right.
And for the Steelers, it kind of comes a point. You're either going all in for right now or you're going all in for later. You can't sit in the middle like this all the time. So I think they're starting to feel the heat on that, and I think that's part of what what brought about their desire to go get another quarterback. Now, you could also argue the situation with Russell Wilson is such that they're not paying him anything. Extremely rare to have a starting quarterback be acquired to start making the league minimum. That doesn't happen. So at the same time, though, if he does work out, they would send him. So they made a move for a long-term starting quarterback. That's their position. That's their mindset. That's one move. You're shaking up things on both sides of the ball. You went and hopefully for their sake found a linebacker that can start more than 1 year and can start 15-plus games in that year at a fairly high price for that position. Not incredibly high, but fairly high. The rumor now is that they're looking into Brandon Ayuk with San Francisco.
Yep.
That's a trade that's probably going to cost you a premium draft pick. Maybe not a first, maybe not even a second, but they'll have to do something to bring a guy like that in. They're going to talk to Mike Williams, the high-level player coming off an injury. There are a lot of things that they're trying to do to really improve their situation at a higher level, I think, than they have in the past. And that's because they know they're stuck in the middle.
What do you think of the acquisition of Jefferson at wide receiver?
If that is, excuse me, I'm talking way too much here. If that is something that the Vikings would be okay with, And that's really where you get stopped, just because, excuse me, not 100% sure the Vikings would come to the point that they really could not do business with Justin Jefferson. Yeah. If they are looking to trade him, if you're Pittsburgh, you have to do that deal, in my opinion. Justin Jefferson, based on the way the game is played today, the production that he has, the ability that he has, the character that he displays, you don't really have a risk paying a guy like that $30 million a year. People freak out at the amount of money as if it's their own. I get that, but high-end players have to be put in a position to produce for a team, and every team is going to have players like that. Whether they're good or bad, they're going to have players like that. Jefferson is, in my opinion, the best all-around receiver in the game. He is among the best playmakers. He is among the best steady targets. A hamstring injury, maybe, he might have held himself out a little bit long just because of the contract situation. I don't know about that. What I know is that the Vikings were a significantly better team when he was on the field. And the chemistry that Kirk Cousins and Jefferson were developing was really something special. They could have made themselves into a pretty high-level offense. I feel like the Steelers could do something similar with that, with Jefferson, on top of the fact that where they're drafting every year, they're not, I understand where Jefferson was drafted, but you're drafting 20, 21, 22. Odds of landing a player like that are extremely small, and Jefferson might be the only one of his generation that you can say that about. Right. So is it going to happen again? That's what you're betting on right now if you need to get that. Plus, the Steelers, above anybody else, should know this. They just sat through the Deontay Johnson fiasco for the last 2 seasons. They had to pay him a lot of money because he refused to play until he got a contract. They wrote up his contract in such a way that it was basically make or break. We are either going to trade you after the 2023 season, or we're going to extend you. Whatever route you want to go is really up to you. And I think we saw what route he chose to go. And now he's looking up at football purgatory for probably another couple of years. Whatever they pay him, I'm not sure it even matters to him, but he's in irrelevancy now. A guy like Jefferson is a championship level player. You could put him on an offense that has been retooled significantly, playing a role similarly to what we saw A.J. Brown play in Tennessee. And he did just fine under Arthur Smith for 2 years. It would be a great fit. I think you've got a good deep ball throwing quarterback, and I think you've got a head coach that is realizing we're going to have to move out of purgatory here, and we're going to have to make some moves to do that. In my opinion, I'm generally pretty conservative when it comes to your draft plans, but at some point, you've got to load up and jump up and make a move for somebody.
2-year deal, Miles Killebrew, your thoughts?
And Killebrew has proved himself to be one of the better special teams players in the game.
Yep.
It was kind of funny. When he came in, it was almost like the Steelers were determined to set the special teams player market on their own. Derek Watt, Miles Boykin, these were $3 million+ players, which at that point was the top of the market. Killebrew came in after that, and along with that, they had things loaded up to be an outstanding special teams unit, and they were pretty good. It's kind of hard to lock down specifically how good a unit is, but their numbers were pretty good. But Killebrew stood out above anybody else that they've had at that dollar amount because he makes plays. He won 2 games in the last 2 years. His play won games for him.
Yep.
How many special teams guys are you saying that about? He's a captain. He's a leader. He's really good at what he does. And from a special teams perspective, he's the type of guy that you want to build around. So it definitely a smart signing. I think there would have been a market for him elsewhere. He's got good football left in him. Nothing against him. I hope the Steelers are not in a situation where he's pressed into service at the safety position again, like they were at the end of last year. Clearly not an ideal situation. He really should be a core special teams guy, and again, he'll be one of the best in the league.
Oh, boy. It's been a crazy cycle, hasn't it? And you're right about the backup quarterback part of it. Because, look, the Vikings signed, Sam Darnold. And I'm going by U.S. Bank Stadium, and I did see a line of people buying tickets when I was there last week.
Darnold's situation is a little bit different. The Vikings need some type of insurance against the quarterback that they don't know who's going to start yet. So you sign Darnold, you pay a premium for Darnold to get him to sign early, probably a premium against, you probably want him for 2 years. He's only going to sign one. That's going to cost you a little bit more. But they don't have their quarterback yet. They clearly have a plan going, and we'll see that kind of materialize leading up to the draft. But I don't think they intend to have Darnold as their starter.
No.
But you don't want to look for a starting quarterback after the draft. You got to get what you can out there, and they felt he was the best option. And look around. I don't know how many great options there are. You might argue Justin Fields, but then that would require the Bears to give them to you, and
right.
I could see a reason why the Bears wouldn't want to do that. So,
especially within the division
who else
too.
Is it? Sam Howell. I mean, that's draft picks you have to give up.
Yes, especially within the division. I mean, you don't like making a quarterback move within the division.
Right. It's just to give him a starting opportunity in the division is probably not in the Bears' best interest. If the Vikings wanted to give up a first-round pick for him, I'm sure the Bears would have done that. But at the price point we're talking about, that's why trades within the division don't really happen all that often, and certainly not for marquee positions like that. There are instances in which it would, but in this case, I understand the stigma that comes with Sam Darnold. I get his history to this point, but again, nameless gray faces. He's roughly at the top of the backup market. He's a good lead pony, tweener starter type of guy. He's got experience. He's got physical skill. He's healthy. If he fits in with what Kevin O'Connell wants to do, it makes sense. In the same way that I would say Justin Fields fits in with what the Steelers want to do under Arthur Smith with Russell Wilson as their quarterback, having a backup who could, at the very least, Wilson isn't a runner as much as he is a mover within the pocket. Fields is mobile. He's athletic. There are things that he can do that you can plan around spontaneously to give your team an advantage. Darnold has similar skills to Cousins, I think, within the offense that they had built for Cousins. I think he makes sense. The fact he's getting $10 million, I think, honestly, is more inflation, and we'll give you a premium to sign right now and not weigh in with anybody else because we want to get this locked up while we try to figure out how to get draft picks to move up in the draft to take the rookie who's going to replace you by week 3. Darnold's a pro. He knows that's what happens. That's why he's being paid $10 million.
I do want to apologize to you, my friend, because I should have asked slightly longer questions because I knew you were trying to get drinks in between answers. So I'm sorry about that. That's on me. Hey.
No, I got something stuck in my throat right in the middle of it. Of course, that was the short question that you asked. It was a great question. I'm glad you asked that because I think that is the talking point that you could look at right now. Because honestly, Jefferson getting the Vikings getting a draft haul from the Steelers this year and next year would all but assure them the ability to move up and get the quarterback that they want and have the ability to find something of a replacement for Jefferson. And then the best part for the Vikings, they're not paying anybody.
Right.
They've got a boatload of space in the future and a way to recraft their roster after Kirk Cousins. Honestly, I think the deal would make sense. I mean, obviously not looking at the comp, but it would make sense on both sides. I think the Steelers desperately need another playmaking receiver. I know that George Pickens is a good one. You have to have weapons like that down the field in Arthur Smith's offense, and you have a quarterback that's his best skill at this point in his career. That deep seam throw, he can hit that, and Jefferson can run it. He can run deep out, as can Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be cheaper. But it's a move I think that would show the Steelers are serious about getting past football purgatory.
Well, never in purgatory here. Sorry, thank you so much. Oh, Neal, you're the best. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
More relaxed conversations you could ever have with a coach because it's the off season. Sort of. John, it's always great to have you back. John Griffin, the head coach of Bucknell. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me on, as always. But I'm doing well. Watched some of the games this week, and our group is getting back to it. So,
yeah, I'll get to your group just in a little bit, but we're gonna have a little fun and talk about the tournament. 12 of the top 16 seeds advanced. There are only 2 mid-majors. That's if you want to include Gonzaga. Oh, and by the way, San Diego State made the Final Four last year. Do we take any conclusions in this particular year, not in a pattern, about how it's turned out in the Sweet 16?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's been enough excitement in the first 2 rounds with mid-majors. I will be one of many to clarify. Gonzaga is not a mid-major.
Yes.
It should not be considered a mid-major.
That's right.
From now until the end of time. And quite frankly, either is San Diego State. Mm-hmm. Many might not know the conference and what it looks like, but San Diego State is a high major situation. They invest heavily into their football and basketball program. I've seen it firsthand.
Yep.
And both of those places, I mean, you look and I would say you qualify mid versus high majors based on institutional commitment. And both of those programs commit at a Power 5 level consistently year after year. So it's a really, really strong field that has advanced. But that being said, the games were terrific.
Yeah.
Aside from a few that typically you don't see where the score differential was, over 20. But there were really high-level basketball games. They're physical. I thought the whistle did not blow nearly as much as many might have predicted. And you had to earn every basket and earn every stop, grab rebounds with great physicality, and it was good quality, entertaining basketball. As someone that's in the industry, I was just very pleased with how the optics and the quality of basketball.
Yeah, and I agree with everything about San Diego State. Steve Fisher took that job for a reason, a long time ago. Right? And then he handed it off to Brian Dutcher, his top assistant. And, the commitment is there. It's like, without question. Which then brings me to this part. How important has it become in today's sports world that you have alignment with a president, a board of trustees, an athletic director leading into a program? What does alignment mean now?
Yeah, I mean, it's just very critical to the overall program's success and, more importantly, sustainability. Look, everybody can find out almost every detail about their favorite program right now if you go on to the internet or Twitter, whatever you prefer, quite frankly. Because, one, there's just so many people that are now interested in their particular programs, but two, information is just so readily available, and depending on the source, it can be right and or wrong. But in athletics, where it's become such a marketing tool for universities across the country, alignment is critical. The messaging, the mission of the university, to find some world of sustainable success. I mean, everyone's got to be on the same page. And there is a place right now for winning athletic programs because there's enough data that now says if done in the right way and consistently being portrayed in the right light, it can bring about some of the greatness of these institutions that might have not been seen before. It's the doorstep of a lot of universities right now, and the first thing people do, and whether it be enrollment or donating to the universities, is really just go to the social media world and find out how the programs are doing. So it's critical for sustained success, and I think that all coaches across the country will say the same thing. And what you're seeing right now is high-quality coaches putting forth a great product and really connected teams playing their hearts out. And that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament. I mean, but there's so much external noise what's happening right now in college football and basketball, but at the end of the day, the product is still true to playing hard, leaving it out there, wearing your heart on your sleeve, being connected, and living in the moment. And you see that with Oakland, you see it with Yale, and it's just amazing, just for the overall health of college basketball, but also in college athletics.
Right. You brought up social media there and the positive impacts it can have, but at the same time, your players are connected. Whether it's Twitter, X, Instagram, whatever it may be. I know you can't control it, but what has always been, as a coach, your message to your players about external noise anywhere, but in particular on social media?
Yeah, I mean, the messaging from me to my team here at Bucknell is, one, I want to make sure they understand the impact that some negative form of using social media can have on their own individual brand. So it's really important for me to bring that education to the forefront so that they don't say or do something that would impact their future. I mean, they're still 18 to 22-year-olds with a long life ahead of them, and they don't want to do anything that could potentially impact that in a negative way that they can't overcome. So that's one. Two, you have to find balance in blocking out what would be negative and, somehow bringing in the positive. I think college athletics across the country right now are trying to navigate the negative impact of social media, which is direct messaging and, to a certain extent, this world of gambling that has now really jumped into college athletics and has taken on a pretty negative light. And you got to really make sure that you're providing enough resources for our students. So I make sure they know, hey, if you're here with us at Bucknell, you have to protect the program, but we're here to help you. If there's something that's really impacting you negatively, bring it to light, bring it to us. We'll help you navigate it appropriately. So it's delicate. It's really delicate. But there's also another side, like you mentioned, where us as a program individually, you can really use it to your advantage, and you can build a brand, an individual brand, a program brand that can, of course, as a program, you have to align yourselves with the missions of your university. For us, Bucknell, we make sure that when we push stuff out on social media to the world, which it's hard for an 18 to 22-year-old to wrap their minds around the idea that you can push a button and the entire world can see whatever you say. So programmatically, we have to make sure that it mirrors the mission of Bucknell. We're here for a bigger picture and to make sure that you're prepared for life beyond the game of basketball.
Cale Sanderson, Penn State's wrestling coach, talked about after the tournament over the weekend about the fact that in the end it's a game, right? And all that hard work that you put in day in and day out allows them for 7 minutes to go out and apply it, but attempt to have fun with it. How important is that approach to you, that we don't forget, and the young people and the coaches don't forget, it's a game, even though there are consequences on winning and losing?
Yeah, it's a tough balance. I mean, it's been a tough balance from way before I've been born, Steve. I mean, everyone's been toggling that balance for quite a long time, for generations, and you want to provide perspective, but at the same time, you also have a job to do as a coach. And the players in today's world, they're so serious about their sports. They're so serious about success. So sometimes they forget, the hard work is for that 7 minutes of action, and they forget the process along the way, how enjoyable it really is. Now, most people, when they look back 10 years down the road, will say it's some of the best times of their life, regardless of wins and losses.
That's right.
Just the process in itself. But in the moment, it's very intense, and there's a lot at stake. I mean, you can make a living now in so many different professional worlds of sports and your brand, and there's just a lot to it right now that makes it maybe a little bit more challenging than ever to just have that balanced perspective. But look, you see it in the NCAA tournament. Grand Canyon lost last night. I love watching the press conferences. So for anybody that's just a college basketball enthusiast, I would recommend going on YouTube, March Madness YouTube, and really watching the press conferences. You see these athletes in their rawest elements, and it's really truly amazing. It makes the games that much more entertaining, but more meaningful. And I bring up Grand Canyon. I watched a clip of a young man just talking about perspective and what he's gained throughout the process of being a basketball player at Grand Canyon. And that's what you see right now. That's why I love the NCAA tournament. I was so fortunate to be a part of it. But it brings people together in such a unique way. It has a bit of a European professional soccer-like feel, where there's just worlds and generations of people coming together to just share in the joy of really their pride. Oakland Beach, Kentucky. There's so many people. I mean, that coach has been there for 40 years that are sharing in that joy, and it makes it so special. And I love it. And I think so many people across the country and across the world really do love it. And unfortunately, Yale did not, get through last night. But honestly, Steve, what it shows you is there's just a massive respect for all programs in college basketball right now. Nobody is taking anybody lightly, and everyone's playing their hearts out, and it's awesome to see.
And James Jones, as we know, has done a phenomenal job at Yale for a long time. Greg Campy's been there for 40 years, a long time. Right? And you could tell the joy with which their players had, not only for themselves, but for their coach. I mean, that showed me so much about what, hey, we not only did this for us, we did this for him too. That tells you you talk about connectivity, it includes the coach in the connectivity.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's all part of the equation. And, Purdue's a 1 seed. Purdue lost last year. They lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. It's 12 months ago. I mean, that's a pain that will never leave your side. So you're seeing a team right now that has experience, that's playing to win versus playing not to lose, but they've been on the other side of it, and they've lost. And so I think you take that for granted a little bit. I can tell you right now, internally in that locker room, they're very grateful that they're still playing.
Yeah.
And I see that across the board. I mean, I really do. I see teams playing their hearts out. I see UConn, who just won the national championship. They want to get right back there. They haven't skipped a beat.
Yep.
And it's going to make for an entertaining last 2 weeks of college basketball, which is just so great for the overall product.
And by the way, in this world, if you think that you can't coach tough at times, go to a Danny Hurley practice. Leave it at that. So let me ask you about your team now. How quickly, it sounds like your guys got back to work right away. What does that mean to you that your players want to get back to work right away? Because they've already begun the process of 24-25. What does that mean to a coach when their players want to get back to work? They embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing because there's no secret here. The transfer portal opened, and it's becoming unfortunately, relatively transactional situation in college athletics where you come and go, and there's no judgment from my end. I mean, I'm not one to judge somebody else's decisions.
That's right. Yeah.
We took a little time off, and everyone had a chance to just rest. Quite frankly, we've been going since July because we went to Italy. So everyone needed to get away from the game, get away from each other. But we will build this back up. We have about a month left or 6 weeks left of school. So we'll start building it back up with a world of lifting and then basketball. And really what it says to me is this group is motivated. They're motivated. 68-65 was the score of our last game. And this group wants the opportunity to get back to that moment, and it's going to start now. And we're process-driven. The messaging is very consistent. We're process-driven. It's not result-oriented, but we want, and this particular group, not coach-led, player-led, they want the opportunity to get back on that court in the semifinals with an opportunity to get to the championship in the Patriot League tournament.
John, it's always a pleasure. You know that. Thanks so much for the time today. We covered a lot of ground, and it was a lot of fun.
I appreciate it, Steve, as always.